Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Um, so you guys can hear me, right? Okay, I believe so. So let me discuss 2 or 3 examples first, then I will try to answer your question. Okay. So yesterday's in the towards the end of yesterday's lecture, so I told you guys that I'm going to show you that the model is important, not the parameter. So parameter is obviously important, but even if you change the underlying model, then a particular sufficient statistic may not remain sufficient. So this is an example corresponding to that. So sufficiency depends not only on the parameter, also on the underlying model. So suppose you are given an IID sample from exponential with mean lambda. Okay. So then define yi equal to indicator of xi more than 2 for all I equal to 1 to n. Okay. So then these yi's are IID with Bernoulli p, where p is equal to probability of x1 more than 2, which is simply e to the power of minus yeah. Okay. So now so clearly the sum of yi is sufficient for this family, this Bernoulli P. So suppose now think that you are only have this sample, you do not know this sample, and this sample is coming from this Bernoulli P, and you want to infer about this P, and you want to find a sufficient statistic of this model based on these yi's, then you know from the result of exponential family that this sum of yi is sufficient for this family, right? Or by using the Neyman factorization theorem, you can tell that the sum of yi is sufficient for this family or this model. Okay, but the sum of yi is not sufficient for exponential of lambda, where lambda is where
discrete
equal to e to the power minus 2 lambda. Okay. And p is between 0 and 1.
1 minus bx less than 2. What is b?
You are asking something? Excuse me.
No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. Okay. So, but this statistic, this sum of yi is actually not sufficient for this family. So, if you simply now consider the original family with this parameterization, so just simply consider this lambda and p to be related in this way, and p is between 0 and 1 as before, as in case of Bernoulli. But it can be shown that the sum of yi is not sufficient. Why? Since you can to show that something is not sufficient or something sufficient, it is easier to use the definition of the sufficiency, right? So that means you need to find a set such that the probability of the sample belonging to that set given this this sum of yi that is not independent of the underlying parameter or underlying model. That is what you need to show. So since probability of say x1 more than 3 given sum of yi is equal to t is actually can be shown that it's n minus 1 is t minus 1 with t by nc. So that means this probability, this conditional probability depends on the parameter, right? So that means the sum of yi is not sufficient. And you can easily find this conditional probability because if x1 is more than 3, then y1 is equal to 1, right? Because it's indicator of x1 more than 2. So that means y1 is 1. So you can simply find the probability of so this thing as the joint of y1 to yn and dividing by this probability of sum of yi is equal to. So from that you can simply find this probability. Let's check that this is actually true. So that means since this conditional probability depends on the parameter, so that's why this sum of yi is no longer sufficient for this original model with this reparameterization, obviously. With this reparameterization, this sum of yi is not sufficient anymore. So that means the sufficiency depends on the parameter, it's true, but it also depends on the underlying model. If you change the model, keeping the same parameter, so then some sufficient statistic may not remain sufficient. So it's important. So that means that's why the general notion of defining sufficiency. So that means defining sufficiency with respect to some model or with respect to some family of model. That is kind of more obvious from this part, right? Because if there is no parameter, then it's fine. Then you simply look into the model. But if there is some parameter, you always think of that parameter only, right? Not the model. But actually, sufficiency depends on the model. Okay. So clear, right? So keep in mind that sufficiency depends on the underlying model, not only on the parameter. So next one. So as I said yesterday, I'm going to do one example of a dependent sample. So example.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, so in this example you just discussed, so suppose we know yi, then
Yeah.
we could find the value of p, right? In the modeling way.
You can find the value of
P.
P.
So yes.
Yeah. So you
TP.
can. Okay. T.
As in pet.
Yeah. So it's you are
No,
simply looking into the distribution. Yeah.
No, sir. I was talking about yi IID of Bernoulli p.
Okay.
So suppose we have the sample yi's, we can find the value of p. And from
you
there,
can, you can estimate the value of P, yeah, from Y. Yeah.
And from there we could find the value of lambda.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah. So so is it that even if we could exactly find the model, even then the statistic is not sufficient?
Yeah, actually it's true. It depends on the underlying model. The sufficiency depends on the underlying model. So you can obviously find the statistic. You can obviously estimate P from these yi's. That means you can simply look into the mean y bar to estimate P. That you can do, and from there you can simply use the relation between lambda and P to estimate lambda. That you can do. That's fine. But my point is that actually that this statistic sum of yi, if you look into this statistic only, where when you want to infer about this model, then actually this sum of yi is not sufficient. You can always find some estimator, but that estimator is not a function of a sufficient statistic. Clear?
No, suppose if you find the parameter, then we will get the we can have the complete information about the model, right? If we can
No.
uniquely determine.
So you can estimate the parameter. So you actually do not know the true value of the parameter, right? You are estimating that.
Okay.
So there is a difference, right? So when you are modeling, you are saying that there is some p that is given by Oracle. That there is some p from where you are getting these observations, but actually you do not know this p. So that's why what you want to do, to infer about this p or infer about this model based on the available observation or available sample. So that is not the exact value of p. That is simply an estimation, right?
Okay. Yes, it's clear.
Okay. So my point is that you can obviously estimate p based on y, and then using this relation you can estimate lambda using y. But my point is that if you want to go through the theory of sufficiency, actually this sum is not sufficient for this model. That's it. So that means whatever you get, you will get using the estimation of p using yi's. So that will not give you something which will be a function of some sufficient statistic. So that's my point. And you will see why we generally look into some function of sufficient statistic. You will see later. Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't understand why to find the sufficiency. We are finding that term like probability of x1 greater than 3.
No. So okay. So up to this is fine, right? The sum of IA is sufficient for
it's
this
fine.
model.
Yep.
So now my claim is that the sum of IA is not sufficient for this model, for this original model. That is my claim. And how I can prove that claim? I can prove using the definition. What is the definition? Definition says that the conditional probability of the sample given the statistic, if that depends on the parameter of the model, then it is not sufficient, right?
Yeah, yes.
So this x1 more than 3, this is so this thing is same as xi belonging to R for all I equal to 2 to n and x1 more than 3, right? This set. I am simply looking into this set, and I am finding the probability of this set given the sufficient statistic. Given this statistic, sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm simply using the definition. Definition says that the probability of the sample belonging to some set given the statistic, if that depends on the parameter or the model, then it's not sufficient. If that does not depend on the parameter of the model, then it is sufficient. But I am seeing that the probability of this set, the sample belonging to this set, given this statistic, depends on the parameter. So that's why it's not sufficient.
Sir, actually, I don't understand why we are taking x1 greater than 3 only.
No. So you want to show, you want to get hold of some set such that the probability of that set given that statistic that depends on the parameter. That is what you want to show, right? So my point is that to show that T is not sufficient, we can show that there exists a set P that this probability that the sample, that means x belonging to A, given this T equal to some P, that depends on the model. Right? This is by the definition.
Yeah.
This whole thing is by the definition.
Yes.
Clear?
Yeah.
Is this point clear?
Yes.
Clear,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So now what we need to do, we need to find a set A. So this is the set. The set is simply this x1 is more than 3 and x2 to xn belonging to R. That's it.
So, sir, basically, this is an existence issue, right? We can choose any Borel set in every
You
book.
can choose any other set actually. You can choose any other
Exactly.
set. That's fine. But my point is that whenever you want to show that some statistic is not sufficient, you need to find some set like this. So here I am simply
Yes.
considering this set. You may consider any other set also to show this.
Okay, if this probability contains the original parameter, then we can say that it's not sufficient.
Yeah, that is the definition, right? So any definition is if and only if. Okay.
Oh, got it. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so in sufficiency, the definition says that this type of probability, this type of conditional probability does not depend on the model or the parameter. Okay, so that means it's if and only if. If it depends on the parameter, then it's not sufficient. Okay, so clear, right? I can explain again if it is not clear.
No, sir, it's clear.
Fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me go to the next example, which is the dependent example. So here this x1, xn are in a Markov chain. So Markov chain is simply a stochastic process where where some xt here it's xn, so xt depends only on xt minus 1. Okay, so that is a Markov chain. And x1 follows Bernoulli theta 1 and xj given xj minus 1 follows Bernoulli theta 1 1 if x Bernoulli theta 1 naught if x j minus 1 is equal to 0. So here the distribution of xj depends on only xj minus 1. That means only on the previous one. So that's why it's a Markov chain. So to find, so what is the parameter here? So parameter is simply this thing, right? Theta 1, theta 1 1, theta 1 0. This is the parameter. So to find sufficient statistic, based on x1 to xn. Okay. So again, how to find a sufficient statistic? To find a sufficient statistic, we generally use the Neumann-Fisher factorization theorem. So that means we have to find the joint PMF of x1 to xn. So here the distributions are discrete. So the joint PMF of x curl is theta x curl is equal to simply if theta curl of x1 product of if theta curl xj So check this. So this is this joint PMF is simply this product. So it's easy to show because so you are simply considering the conditionals. So since xj depends only on xj minus 1, so that's why this only xj minus 1 remains. Okay. So this thing is simply, so I'm simply copying from the note, but I recommend you guys to check this because whenever you are having some dependent sample, generally this way of finding the joint PMF is useful. So first considering the conditionals and then simply look into that at point j if xj depends on whatever the other values. Okay. So in many ways it's useful. So it's simply theta 1 of x1 1 minus theta 1 2 1 minus x1 product of j equal to 2 to n theta 1 1 xj 1 minus theta 1 1 1 minus xj whole to the power of xj minus 1 theta 1 not xj 1 minus theta 1 not 1 minus xj. So because this thing is Bernoulli given the observed values. So now again, since there are two possibilities, so actually, so this thing, this xj given xj minus 1, if you remove this observed value, that is again Bernoulli. So that's why this xj minus 1, 1 minus xj minus 1. So now you need to simplify this expression, nothing else. To write it in the form of, so this g theta of ex squared into h of x squared, right? That is what you need to do. So you need to simplify this and write it in this form, and then find what is this t of x squared, right? So now what is this? This can be shown. This can be shown that this theta 1 of x1 1 minus theta 1 of 1 minus x1 theta 1 1 of sum of xj xj minus 1 equal to 2 to n 1 minus theta 1 1 sum of 1 minus xj xj minus 1 theta 1 not sum of xj 1 minus xj minus 1 and 1 minus theta 1 not sum of 1 minus xj 1 minus xj minus 1. So there are four possibilities, right? xj xj minus 1 1 minus xj xj minus 1 xj 1 minus xj minus 1 and 1 minus xj 1 minus xj minus 1. So there are four possibilities, that's why there are four things. So now so this whole thing is actually this g theta of x squared, and simply consider this h of x squared to be equal to 1. Okay. So then what is t of x squared? T of x squared is simply let me write it capital X. X1 x squared is simply x1, 1 minus x1, then sum of x01 minus x0 minus 1, sum of x0 minus 1, 1 minus x3, sum of x minus, and the sum of 1 minus x3, 1 minus x3 minus. Right? So that means here the sufficient statistic has dimension 5, right? Or no, 6, dimension 6. Okay. Yeah. So that means so here the main point is that the sufficient statistic has increased dimension. So that means in this example, if you consider x1 to xn to be IID, say, then you will have the dimension 1, right? Because it's Bernoulli, so you will have dimension 1. But whenever the dependence comes, so then the internal structure of the sample is more complex, and to get hold of that information, you need more dimension actually, more dimension in the sufficient statistic. So that's why the dimension here is higher than as you see in case of the IID sample. So you will see a few more, I think, dependent examples in the assignment. So I have already posted assignment 1 on the course website, and you will find few problems, few problems which where you will find the random sample is a dependent sample. Okay, and you will see actually that if instead of dependence, if the samples are independent or IID, then actually the dimension of the sufficient statistic is much lower. So here also the same. So clear, right? Oh, sorry. So one thing is that I do not need this 1 minus x1, right? Because there is x1. So its dimension is 5. So okay. So clear? I think it's clear. Okay. So so the examples of sufficiency is kind of done. So the important thing in sufficiency, whenever you have sample from some parametric model, try to check whether that parametric model is some kind of exponential model or not. If that is an exponential model, then you can directly say what is the sufficient statistic, right? And if it is not an exponential model, then you have to work a little harder, because then you need to write the joint PDF or the joint PMF in terms of the product of G, theta, and H, as in the Neyman factorization theorem, and from there you have to claim that some T is sufficient. Okay, so that's the general procedure of finding some sufficient statistic. Okay. So one more thing is that if T is sufficient and T is a function of some other statistic U, then U is also sufficient. Right? Why? Why is this true, and how you can show that this is true?
Sir, so since T is sufficient, that means that T does not depend on the parameter, correct? On the parameter
Yeah, T does not depend on the parameter. The conditional distribution of the joint sample given the statistic T, that does not depend on the parameter. That
Yeah,
distribution does not depend on
exactly. Yeah. So if we write U as a F inverse T, the set theoretic inverse, so then can we say that U is also, so first we'll have to show that U is a also a random variable, right? Or some statistic.
So U is given as a statistic. So that means it's a random variable. You can assume that random variable or random vector.
Yeah, okay. So the set
But-
theoretic,
But if you think of F inverse, whenever you are writing F inverse, then F needs to be 1-to-1, right? But that
yes,
may not be the case.
okay, no, I was talking about the set theoretic inverse. So, okay, but it won't be well defined. Okay, yes, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
so yeah,
It won't be well defined.
in set theoretic inverse, you may have many pre-images. So that will create problem.
Yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, exactly.
So then
Okay,
what is
so
the
this is,
easiest way? You can simply think of the Neyman-Fisher factorization theorem. So in Neyman-Fisher factorization theorem, what you show, you generally show that, let me consider the parametric one. So it's f theta of x curl is simply g theta of tx curl of h of x curl, right? So now simply t of x curl, what is that? This is simply f of u of x curl. So now this is simply g tilde theta of u of x curl, h of x curl. What is g tilde theta? It's simply g theta composite of x, right? So that means again use the Neyman-Fisher factorization theorem to claim that this u is sufficient. But it's not the other way around. So that means if something is sufficient and you consider the function of that, instead of looking into fu, if you consider f of t, then that ft may not be sufficient. Okay. So this is the second one. Second point is that so this is one. This two is that if t is sufficient, then f of t may not be sufficient. Okay. So I have done an example today where this fact is clear. So in the example where I showed that the sufficiency depends on the model, so there this y1 to yn. So this is, so if you simply think this as the vector, so this whole sample is sufficient for exponential lambda, but the sum of yi is not sufficient. So this thing is a function of this, but this is not sufficient. So that means this thing is not true. It's the other way around. So that means if t is sufficient and t is function of some statistic, then that statistic is sufficient. Okay. So that's it for today. So tomorrow I'm going to start minimal sufficiency. So minimal sufficiency is so here in many examples, for example, let's consider the simplest Bernoulli case. In Bernoulli case, the original sample is sufficient. That is obvious. And again, the sum of xi is sufficient, right? So now which one you are going to choose between these two? You will choose sum of xi, right? Because sum of xi is somehow reducing the complexity in the sigma algebra. So that's why you will choose sum of xi over the whole sample. So the minimal sufficient statistic comes through that analogy. Actually, sum of xi is a function of x1 to xn, but x1 to xn is not a function of sum of xi. So that means you will choose that thing, that statistic, which is a function of any other sufficient statistic, and that statistic is the minimal sufficient statistic. So if you can find a statistic which is a function, which is some function of any other sufficient statistic, then that statistic is minimal sufficient. So I'll describe and I will do a few more examples tomorrow. Okay. And one last thing, just let me give you some brief understanding about the connection between the measure theory and sufficiency. So, for example, if I consider tossing a coin twice independently, then what is the sample space? This is the sample space. So what is the sigma algebra? So generally, whenever the underlying space is countable, we generally consider the power set to be the sigma algebra. Okay. So that means it's so it's the power set. So I have to write it. So I have to show something. That's why I am writing all of these things. So, the whole set, the long set. What are the other things remain? There is one remaining. This thing is so there should be total 16 elements in this script, which is the power set of this omega. Script is simply the power set of omega. So now, so x1 of h is 1 and x1 of xi of e is 0. So these are the random variables I equal to 1 to 2. Suppose the sample size is 2. So then x1 of h is 1 and x1 of t is 0. Similarly, x2 of h is 1, x2 of t is 0. And you have the sample size of 2. So then this x1, x2 as if you consider this x card, this x card is so x card, then the sigma of x card is actually descriptive, right? Because you have to consider all such possibilities, and you can check that this is true. Let's check. Okay, so you know what is sigma of x card. So sigma of x card is simply x card inverse of the sigma algebra generated by x card inverse of b. B belongs to the Borel sigma algebra on R2, right? So this is what sigma algebra is, right? Sigma algebra generated by x card, and you can show that this x card this sigma algebra is actually this power set. So that means there are 16 elements. But instead, you know that in this model, in this Bernoulli model, sum of xi is sufficient. So then so sum of xi is sufficient, that you know. Then what is sigma of sum of xi? So the main motivation behind doing sufficiency is to reduce the complexity of the sigma algebra from the sigma algebra generated by the sample, right? That was the motivation of defining sufficiency. So now if you simply consider the sigma algebra generated by sum of xi, so then what is this sigma algebra? You can show, I'll again just check. So this is nothing but, so what are the values that this sum of xi can take? Sum of xi can take 0, 1 or 2, right? This is corresponding to, you are looking into the inverse. So this is corresponding to 2, this is corresponding to 0. And what is the other thing that is corresponding to 1? HT and TH, right? So it will, this sum of xi will not distinguish between HT and TH, because both will give the value 1, right? So then the remaining things will come. HT, TH, ET, HT, TH. Now set and the total. So this is the sigma algebra generated by the sufficient statistic. So here, how many elements are there? There are total 8 elements in the sigma algebra. But in the sigma algebra generated by the sample, there are 16 elements. Why? Because the sum of xi is not distinguishing this HT and TH. So that means indeed this sum is reducing the complexity of the sigma algebra. So that means sufficiency indeed reduce the complexity of the underlying sigma algebra. So my point in showing this example is to show that that the sufficient statistic reduces the complexity of the underlying sigma algebra. So clearly it does, right? So that's my point. So always when I started sufficiency, I told you guys that the motivation behind sufficiency is to get some sub sigma algebra. So that means reducing the complexity and but retaining all the information. So here this retains the information regarding P, because in estimating P you only need the number of hits, not the position of hits. So that is what this sigma algebra is doing, right? Just keeping in mind the number of hits, not the positions. But actually in this case, the original sigma algebra keeps in mind both the number of hits as well as the position of it. But that is not required. In sufficiency, you only need the number of hits. Clear this thing? I think clear. Okay. So, do you guys have any question on the first 3 lectures?
Sir, in this, xi is heads on the ith position, right?
Xi?
Xi is heads on the ith position, right? It
Yeah,
will
I
be
have question.
1
Yeah,
with head.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, like, how do we compute the sigma algebra? Can you explain once again, if possible, please?
So, since you
Sigma
are
algebra
doing
for summation x1, x2. Sigma algebra for x1 plus x2. I want to know how we calculate that.
this one.
Yes.
Okay. So, what is sum of xi? Sum of xi can take values 0, 1, and 2, right?
Yes.
So now, since it can take only 3 values, and you know that you are looking into you are considering the power set as a sigma algebra. So and the points are discrete. So you first choose the inverses of the individual points. So 0. So you will simply look into the sum of xi. If you call that to be t, okay, t inverse of 0, t inverse of 1, and t inverse of 2. Okay. You will simply find these 3 and then simply fill the blanks actually. So you need to fill
Yes.
the
Okay.
blanks so that this becomes a sigma algebra, and that you can do only when you consider the power set of these 3 points, right? Then only you can make that to be a sigma algebra.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah.
from there I wrote this.
Got it. Thank you, sir. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So any other question?
Hello, sir.
Okay. Yeah.
Sir, I didn't understand the like application of the measure properly. I mean, why we are like incorporating the Lebesgue measure in like finding the sufficient statistics. I mean, in the Lehmann-Fisher factorization theorem,
Yeah.
we are derivating. We use the derivative of the CDF with respect to the measure, Lebesgue measure.
Yeah.
So why we are doing that? I mean, so can you explain the intuitive idea about it?
No, the question is not why. The question is whether whatever you have learned before regarding that density or the PDF or the PMF and the derivative that you have seen, the measured derivative, if those things are same or not, right? That should be the question.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So for example, let's consider normal 0, 1. Okay. So let's say x follows normal 0, 1. Then how you find probability of x belonging to A? This is simply integral over A to the power minus x squared by 2 by root 2 pi dx, right? So this probability of x belonging to A is simply probability of x inverse of A, and this P of x inverse, as I said before, is nothing but the distribution. And what is the distribution of x? Normal 0, 1. So that means it's simply the normal 0, 1 measure of A, right? Is this notation clear? First of all, I am simply writing the measure to be this normal 0, 1. That's it. So I am saying that this P composed x inverse is actually a measure, and this is actually the distribution of x or the law of x. And you already know the law of x is normal. So that's why this P composed x inverse of some set is nothing but the measure of this normal 0, 1 measure of the set A. Okay. And you
Yes,
know how to find this
Yes.
probability. This probability can be found by integrating this integrand over the set A, right? So my point is that this integral is nothing but actually the Levy integral should be written like this: x squared by 2 root 2 pi indicator of x belonging to A d lambda of x. Okay. I am saying that this integral and this integral, these two things are same. So this integral is Riemann integral, and this integral is Lebesgue integral. So I can find this probability using this Riemann integral, or I can find this probability using this Lebesgue integral, and it can be shown that this Lebesgue, the way of defining integral through Lebesgue way is much more general than Riemann way, than way of defining in Riemann way, because there are plenty of examples where you can get you can actually find Lebesgue integral of some function, but the Riemann integral of that function is not defined. So that's another point. So that's another point. Here I want to say is that this probability can be calculated by looking into this Riemann integral or by looking into this Lebesgue integral. So now whenever you are saying that this probability is this Riemann integral, from here what you say? From here, using the fundamental theorem of calculus, what you say? That this the derivative of this thing, or if I consider this set x say less than equal to x, then simply consider 0 to x, sorry, minus infinity to x, and it's sorry, x less than equal to y. Okay, so now you are whenever you are writing this probability, the probability of this set as this integral from the fundamental theorem of calculus, you can say that the derivative of this thing with respect to mix thing. So this is nothing but e to the power minus x squared by 2 by root 2 pi, right? This is the derivative. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So that is the definition of derivative, right? Whatever you integrate, so that is the derivative of this function with respect to this one. So here also the same thing. Here the notation is that whatever I said earlier, notation is different, otherwise things are the same. So from here, if I go here, then it's simply the derivative of normal 0, 1 with respect to the Lebesgue measure at point x is simply e to the power minus x squared by 2, right? So here, this is the derivative that you are getting from the Riemann integral, and this is the derivative that you are getting from the Lebesgue integral. So this is the definition. So whenever you are saying that this probability or the measure of this set, measure of let's say a equal to minus infinity to y, measure of this set is equal to this, then it is defined that this thing is actually the derivative of the measure normal 0, 1 with respect to the Lebesgue measure. Okay. So so is there any difference? There is no difference actually. In the Riemann integral, it's the derivative of the CDF. In the Lebesgue integral, you say the derivative of this measure with respect to this measure. That is simply what you say. Nothing. There is no difference. Okay. So but whatever I said before, that the Lebesgue integral is much more general than the Riemann integral. So whenever in Riemann integration or in the elementary probability theory, whatever you say, whatever you have seen, that in case of continuous you consider integral, in case of discrete you consider sum. That is what you generally do, right? But in Lebesgue integral there is no difference between sum and integral. So Lebesgue integral may be sum, Lebesgue integral may be integral. The integral, the whatever integral you generally think of. So this Lebesgue integral is much more general. You do not need to think whether the underlying distribution is discrete, continuous, or any mixture. But whenever you are doing the probability using the Riemann integration, then actually you need to think about that. You need to either consider the discreteness or continuous, all those things. Otherwise, it will be messy actually writing the things. But in Lebesgue, there is no problem. So that's why I considered the Lebesgue integration instead of Riemann integration. But there is no difference, right? There is no difference. The same thing. Instead of writing dx, I'm writing d lambda x. So similarly, if you consider this y follows say Bernoulli or let's write binomial 10p, then in half scale, then the probability that y belonging to A is simply the sum of x belonging to A times cx of to the power of A, right? So this is the probability, and in Lebesgue you will write it in this way: integral of 10 cx of to the power of 10 indicator of x belonging to A d nu of x. This nu is the counting number. Okay, so that means in Lebesgue integration, this sum is integral, again this integral is integral. So that's why it's more general and it's easier to write anything. Clear, right?
Yes, I got it. I mean, for the discrete measure, we will use the counting measure, and for the continuous
You will
case, we
use
will
the
use the
Lebesgue
Lebesgue
measure.
measure.
Exactly.
Yeah, I
Exactly.
got
So
it.
it's but the theorems that for example the Neyman-Fisher factorization theorem is much more general. Much more general in the sense that you can also consider some other measure, not only Lebesgue or counting. Whatever you have seen till now, you either used Lebesgue or counting. That means you either considered the absolute continuous distribution or the discrete distribution. But actually, it may be anything. Any sigma finite measure will do.
Okay, sir.
Any other question?
Sir,
Okay. Yeah.
so for the Neyman-Fisher theory, that derivation for the only part, in the notation you had means you started writing that f theta x curl, then in the next step you have written that f theta, it is the joint distribution of the x curl and tx curl. Are we writing this from the assumption that the conditional distribution is does not depend on theta? Means how are we getting that step, that f theta x curl? Yes, sir.
So that means you are saying the joint distribution of x curl and the joint distribution of x curl tx curl, those two things are same. That is what your question, right?
Yes, sir, you asked to check that, so
Yeah. So you can simply think of the discrete distribution. Then I think the things will be clear. So then you can write that f to be the probability, right? Probability of x curl equal to x, and x curl, capital X curl equal to small x curl. And what is the joint PMF in that case? It should be probability of x curl equal to small x curl, comma capital T is capital X curl equal to capital T small x curl.
okay, sir, I got it.
So, and these two things are same, right?
Yes, sir.
So in discrete it is easy to understand, but in continuous it's not so easy. in continuous, you need to check this, you need to go through those epsilon delta, because that's how the PDFs is defined. What is PDF? It's in continuous, in absolutely continuous, for absolutely continuous distribution. It's simply the derivative of the CDF. So that means you are simply looking, you are considering some point and looking into some neighborhood of that point, and you are simply looking into the probability in that interval divided by the length of the interval and taking the limit with respect to such that length going to 0. So if you think in that way, then actually you can write the continuous probability, the probability of some continuous random variable in terms of probability also. Or the PDF of sorry, what I meant is that the PDF of some continuous random variable in terms of probability also. So whenever you can do that, you can do the same thing as you did in case of discrete.
Okay, sir.
Okay. And that is another, so whatever you point out, actually that is another reason behind considering measure theory or considering the Lebesgue integral instead of Riemann integral. Because if you think of everything in terms of Lebesgue integral, actually this difficulty will not come. So obviously the theoretical difficulty will be there, but if all the theories are clear to you, then there will be no glitches in the proof. Okay, so that's why the measure theory is important. Okay, any other question? Any comment? Okay, so then so that's it for today. We will meet tomorrow at 9:30. Okay, so bye.